This is Emily, president of Advocacy of ADEC and podcast host. Welcome to another episode of our monthly podcast, Expert Tips by ADEC Self-Advocates. I just want to say happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Yeah, for people wondering who is talking right now, this is Lydia from Gaining Ground.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I genuinely am so humbled and honored that you wanted me to be a part of this. I've always wanted to be a part of a podcast in my life, and I'm just really happy that it's with you.
What is your last name, actually?
Mino.
Oh.
Mino. It's a Latin last name. It's really popular in Argentina, so that's where my dad is from. So.
Yes. Got it.
Yes.
So what does self-care mean to you?
Well, self-care is very important to me. And I think, I'm just I'm a writer. So two, words, they have a very heavy meaning to me. I don't take them lightly. I write poetry, fiction stories. I journal a lot. So I always like to know the definition and the nits and gritties of things. So when we talk about self-care, that is a noun. So it could be of a state, you're just always in a state of self-care. But it can also be a verb. So you can feel concern or interest and attach importance to something and to look after and provide the needs of. But before we can really embrace that definition of care, I really think it's important to be self-aware first. Because if we're not self-aware of where our mind is or where our heart is or where our physical being is, where our spirituality is, I think we will never be able to care about ourselves, because if we're not aware of how we're feeling, thinking, we're never going to be able to assess if there's a problem or not.
For me, when it comes to self-care, I just feel like it's about caring about your physical, mental, emotional well-being.
Yeah.
Because in general, self-care is all about that R&R, the rest and recovery process of how you take care of yourself.
So, how have you been in a state of feeling like you're only surviving or feel like you're thriving?
I don't know if I've been in a state of surviving, but maybe. I feel like right now I'm thriving.
That's good. And what are some things that are going on in your life that make you feel that way?
The thing that makes me feel that way, that I'm thriving more than surviving, is just, I feel like I have more than a lot of other people have. And I tend to be very aware of what's mindful or being, like you said, self-aware. Self-awareness is definitely a huge part of self-care.
100%. I like to focus more on the little things than the bigger things in life.
Yeah.
And I feel like once I focus more on the little things, I'm able to thrive a lot more.
Yeah, I absolutely agreed. Speaking of that, how can self-care relate to self-advocacy?
That's a very good question. I think they're under the same umbrella, for sure.
Yeah.
Self-advocacy is it's kind of being assertive and knowing one's rights, right?
Right.
So you can, people were self-advocates, fighting for activist causes or, the civil rights movement, back in the 60s, that was a big time for people caring about themselves and advocating to make change, with what was going on during that time.
Yeah, especially with Rosa Parks
and
Martin Luther King Jr.
Racism and everything that was going on. But also, I feel like maybe the past 10 years, from 2010 forward, I've noticed a big shift in our generation and a big shift just globally of people being more, they're advocating for mental health more. People are speaking up, they're being more transparent, they're being more vulnerable, and we've seen a bigger community with that. That's how I feel self-advocacy relates to self-care. So,
Yeah, I totally get that. Completely.
mm,
Can you share a time when practicing self-care positively impacted your well-being?
yes. Um, there's certain experiences in my life. One of them happened recently, actually, like last year. I had a rash come onto my chest area. And so that frightened me. And I was like, and it wouldn't go away. Um, so at first, with my health anxiety and everything, I thought it was cancer, right? So I'm just like, I'm thinking of the worst case scenario, like we were talking about that all or nothing mentality. um,
Yeah, the all or nothing, like the devil on your shoulder,
exactly.
the devil's advocate.
And then you have the angel over here trying to
Yeah.
calm you down, and then they're just fighting, and you're like, what do I do? But yeah, I kind of had a health scare, so it didn't go away for like I noticed it appear during election week, when everything was going on, and then it didn't really go away until recently, like a couple weeks ago. But I was going back and forth to the doctor. I was trying different creams, and they first thought it was a yeast infection. So instead of cancer, but I was just like, well, the treatments you're giving me, it's not really getting rid of the rash and everything. So I did more research, so I was like, all right, so if option A, B, and C didn't work, I have to come up with a different way. It's like I can't just accept defeat. So, and then I also let go of that fear inside my head, because I realized it wasn't helping me. Just having that fear of having cancer and being over dramatic, it was just kind of ruining my day to day tranquility and my peace, right? So
Right.
once I did the research and once I really realized what a yeast infection was, I realized, oh, this is candida. It's in your gut. It feeds off carbs and sugar. And I was stress eating during that time after turning 25. So I was like, okay, maybe that, you know, went hand in hand. And so once I cleaned up my diet, I started working out, and I drank a lot of kombucha, because kombucha has a lot of probiotics in it. So it helps
Is that how
cleanse
it's
your gut.
is that how it's pronounced? Kombucha?
Kombucha, yeah. But it's, people really don't like it because they think it tastes nasty, and there is vinegar in it, so it's really bitter. So my advice to people is find a flavor you like or tolerate, and then, just mind over matter, mind over matter. So with that, once once I found an alternative, yeah, I was able to clear it up. But so that, it taught me to take better care of myself, and it taught me like health is very important.
I
Yeah.
get that.
Yeah. So that taught me a lot about self-care. But how about you? Like, have you had any big experiences in your life?
I don't know about anything like massive as that, but it was the moment when I realized the power of like mindfulness and reflection,
Mhm.
especially through like meditation.
Mhm. And how do you meditate? Like, what's that routine look like for you?
Mm. I don't exactly know what my meditation routine is yet,
Mhm.
but like I just know that there's a certain power through it that actually absolutely like helps you like mentally
Mhm.
and emotionally.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But also, how did you discover mindfulness?
We've done meditation
Mhm.
before,
Yeah.
and it makes me want to implement it more in my daily life.
Mhm. What are some of your favorite self-care practices?
And this is a part of it as well.
Mhm.
There's a meditation, pedicures, massages. I,
100%.
yeah, I just love taking the time to relax or having that
Mhm.
chance to have that R&R because, well, I'm worth it. Like, I deserve
Mhm.
a moment where I'm, like, resting and recovering my body.
Mhm. 100%. And it also feels good to like feel pampered.
Yeah.
Like, I'm putting this energy to take care of myself, to feel good, to look good, and I like how my nails are, different
Yeah.
colors sometimes.
Those that don't have a self-care routine, what do you think are the best tips
Okay.
that you have for someone to get started?
Make a list of what makes you happy. And I feel like pros and cons, or like evaluating like what we were talking about earlier, like being aware. Like my first tip would just become self-aware. You know, if you feel like you don't, if you feel like you're in a situation that is self-destructive, or you feel like you're, you can't, you're self-sabotaging. My number one tip is to become self-aware first. You first have to acknowledge, I am not okay, or I am going through a rough time. You kind of have to put your pride aside to humble yourself and just be like, embrace that humility and just be like, okay, I'm not feeling okay, or I'm not okay. And then my second tip would to be reach out to someone. Feeling alone, or being lonely, or feeling like you have to battle yourself all by yourself is just not a good mentality to have, because the best self-care tips I've gotten was just from talking to someone, or like reaching out for advice or getting help. Those are my self-care tips, I would say.
Yeah.
And take care of your health. Eat well and exercise. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Huge difference. But yeah, what are your self-care tips?
If you already have an idea of what you want to do, or you could try and like implement like what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
But if it doesn't work for you, that's okay.
100%.
To completely acknowledge that, and then also figure out what does.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
We all make mistakes.
100%.
We're never going to be perfect.
Also, I have a question for you.
Ooh, what?
If you were to see that if someone was struggling with self-care, what would you do to help them at first? Like if you saw that they were like in a bad place mentally, or you could see that they were kind of struggling just to, get through life and everything.
I kind of like check in.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of like sometimes when I notice that someone is not necessarily like feeling their best or their 100%,
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say it's okay to feel those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to add that. You have every right to feel however you're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you shouldn't be ashamed of what those feelings are.
100%. 100%. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, and thank you so much for choosing me to talk about self-care. Like, I genuinely am a big advocate for self-care, and I obviously mental health. And yes, I had a great time talking with you today on your podcast. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Also, I may want to talk to you again in the future for the podcast.
Yeah, if there's any other idea or topic that you want to talk about, like I am literally, you just have to ask me, and then I'm there.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about like coffee art.
Yeah, we can definitely do that for another podcast. For sure.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for coming, Lydia.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of Expert Tips by ADXF Advocates. This is Emily and Lydia signing off.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in and hearing from your neighbors with disabilities. Check out next month's podcast for a new guest and topic. I am Emily, host of Expert Tips by ADXF Advocates. See you next month.